Welcome to the hills of Germany for round number 4 of the Indy Pro 2000 iRacing Championship. We're now at the Nürburgring, the Nordschleife, one of the longest circuits on the iRacing service and the longest one of the calendar. This is going to be exciting. 14 miles over 150 corners, and some of the Pro Monster community's best are going to come out here and put on a show. My name is Jonathan Burke. Alongside me this week is Tom Davis. Down in the production booth is Hugo Luis. Track cams provided by Istvan Ballard and Track Cams 22, as well as onboards provided by our own Tyler Maxton. And Tom, this is probably going to be one of the wild card races of this season. We don't really know what we're getting into here at the Nordschleife. We have 23 drivers on hand, and anything can happen.
Anything. Absolutely anything can happen. Obviously, that's the case when we come into any Nordschleife race, whether it's GT cars, Mazdas, it doesn't matter. The Nordschleife always gives you something. But I have never actually seen single-seaters at the Nürburgring on the big circuit. So this is going to be total chaos, I think, potentially. We've got a really stacked split in terms of drivers. All the guys that are doing well this week, they're all in here. So we've got the guys who are experienced, the guys that know what they're doing, but you never know what the Nordschleife is going to give you.
It's going to be a really intense battle, I think, at the front. We have several big names, several of the regulars. And let's look at the schedule. We're on a 2-week kind of spring break vacation here in Germany. Hockenheimring is next, and there are already people in the forums talking about it. It's going to be a very popular race, very intriguing race. And then we head back stateside in the American South for Phoenix, Long Beach, Daytona, Laguna Seca, and USA Speedway. All of the sunshiny parts of the USA, and it should be interesting. Here are the championship standings. TNT's and Medema currently stands on top, and it's the TNT 1-2, with Edward Paddock currently in second. Servi Seppa has had a very quiet season, but not this week. He's won twice so far here at the Nürburgring and has been one of the fastest drivers on track. Christoph Herbingo is in fourth. He's fallen a little bit. He is actually not racing this week. It's all hands on deck for Delta Sport U4K for Ivra. And let's take a look at our starting grid. Kimi Antonelli, he won at Imola. The Mercedes junior driver and karting champion is in P1. Servi Seppa from Finland is in P2. Julio Attella from Finland is in P3. And TNT Zamadima in P4. Rust Racing, Mitch Ian Green is back in P number 5, and Michael Durtruck is in P6. Timu Toika is in P7, Adrian Weber for Raccoon Racing, a small little Finnish team, in P8. Fidel Fernandez in P9, and Gabriel Perez in P10. Andrew L. Barry is in P11, and Adam Wright is in P12. Gon Emilia is in P13, always consistent Frank Nguyen in P14. Marcus Freinz in P15. Fabio Berchel back in 16th. Jeffrey Kongsfield hoping he has a better week than last week. Last week was kind of a nightmare out in Iowa. He's back in 17th. And Gavin Sanders in P18. Adrian Pervenando in P19. Jürgen Kastorf in P20. David Dedlot, he's had impressive charges from the back of the field in P21. Matthew Madort in P22. And Robert Barnes rounding out our field of 23. A little bit of an interesting field, an interesting mix-up of some regulars and some new faces here. And some guys, again, a one-time show last season for Antonelli, but we saw how good he could be. And I think with the quality of field drivers, especially even at the front of the field, it's going to be an interesting one.
It's going to be really, really tight. One thing that is stuck in my mind in particular was Kimi Antonelli's start that time we saw him out in Imola. He timed his getaway to perfection, and that actually set him up for the whole race. I'm really interested to see if he can gap the field from the line as quickly as he did previously.
We're snaking our way down to the final corners. Over 14 miles of action, single-seaters here at the Nürburgring. The pace car is going to go down pit road, and we are green, green, green from the hills of Germany, and just what a jump out ahead to get the lead. I was seeing how that's correct. That's David Dedlot, who was all the way out in front. Really good jump from him. Antonelli and Servi Seppa are now going to fight side by side. We're going to single file out as we head through the Herkbach section. And this is going to be one of the earliest times, I think, to really get positions while everyone's going to be grouped up now to try and really get out front.
Yeah, this is one of the parts of the lap where you wouldn't normally see cars side by side, but on lap 1, of course, you have to, and immediately a few of the cars just trying to sort themselves out, find their position, and then the Nordschleife all about making sure you don't lose time, so that when you come onto one of these long, flat-out sections, you're in a great position to slipstream and try and make the move into the next corner. But all of them are scary. Look right now, we'll come up over this blind crest, a little bit of a lift potentially on the front wheels even, and then you're through quick double rights, then the track will go to the left, and your foot's to the floor the whole way through this part.
And apologies, there's a bit of a scoring error. That was Antonelli that got a big jump, and it was Attilia and Seppa that were fighting for a second. And along the inside, that was Adrian Weber, I believe, going down the inside of Gabriel Perez. Weber, a little-known Raccoon Racing driver, as well as the Nordschleife GT team that took P3 in their split for the 12 Hours of Sebring not too long ago. So good seeing some newer teams and some different teams out this week. There's Michael D. Turk at the end of this track group as Fernandez and Toyka are going at it. Team Toyka just signed with Nexus Esports for the Road to Pro on the truck side of things, on the oval side. And he's looking to make some noise, trying to get up into these positions. And one of the things we always talk about is going to be the draft in this series. Whenever we go to a road course or even an oval course, but how do you get a draft in a track like this that's constantly turning?
It's similar to how you would look to be doing it normally as they come through towards, I believe this is Metzger's field. We'll now get a replay going backwards. Oh, it just out wide, skids back across the circuit, and there's one of your characteristics of the Nürburgring. As soon as you lose it, you're in the wall. That's not great for Adrian. It's not great for the 2 cars that he took with him either.
Now that was Kenstup and Sanders, and 2 of whom are still in the pits, and Sanders has retired from the race. We saw a little bit of cars merging. Not the way you want to start your race, especially in this 5-lap event, especially with something that's so tricky. It's such a driver's circuit. It's really going to have to be, you have to be on your A game as much as you can. You got to look at the leaders. Hatelia and Seppa are the 2 up front. Medima and Mitch Ian Green currently in the top 5, and it's going to be interesting to see how this kind of plays out in this top 5 group. Antonelli has scooted away, so how are they going to try to approach chasing down the Mercedes junior driver?
It's just a case of you got to be consistent around here, you know. There will be mistakes from everybody, no matter how good you are. The Nordschleife is all about making sure that your mistake is just going a little bit too deep somewhere as opposed to clipping a curb and being in the barrier. So it's all about damage limitation, making sure the gap doesn't become too big, because remember, you've still got the massive straight at the end of the lap in the form of the Dotting Ahoa to come. And when we get there, you might see position changes from as far back as a second and a half in these particular machines. They're going to go side by side beneath the trees. That's the one machine of Seppa attempting to challenge Haitala for 2nd position. It's not quite going to work there though, because now the track will start to twist and turn again as they break into the right-hander, sorry.
And the Black Flag Racing machine of the number 2's hanging out in front. This is a replay of Timu Toyka, who's been dropping down the order, and this is what can happen at the Nürburgring. It's just a simple driver error. It's so hard to prepare for a track like the Nordschleife that is so long and difficult. And the unfortunate thing, he's going to have to pull over and tow. They're just so far away from pit road, it's impossible to limp back home like that.
Yeah, it's one of the characteristics. When you got a lap that's over 20 kilometers long, whereas normally we'd see an attempt to limp back, is simply not worth it on this particular circuit, because you'll be in the wall 3-4 more times before you even get there. We're on board with Haitala at the moment, looking back at the orange of Seppa and of course the yellow TNT machine of Medema. Look how narrow the circuit is, and also how big the curbs are. They come back up through the hill, and then once again you're going down, and then you'll hook it up. Avoid that inside curve there, because as ever it is absolutely massive. Seppa trying to get close, but at the moment the dirty air not particularly helping. That curb, one of the few ones you can actually run, which is fortunate given that they always do. But at the moment there's not quite enough of a slipstream or a mistake from the 2 car to allow anybody else close enough to make the move.
And I'm wondering if Seppa is getting held up by the Black Star Racing machine in front of him, because they've lost Antonelli by a good margin. It's 3.5 seconds. Kimi Antonelli is scooting away from this pack, and I think that one car is starting to try and find his way around. He's already on the back of Haitala. Here comes Seppa, and remember, any mistake gives Medima or Green a chance to dive up the inside.
Yeah, and that's exactly what those two will be waiting for at the moment, particularly Mitchell and Green. We know that he's an opportunistic driver, and as a result, this circuit should be absolutely perfect for him. What's happened to Koenigsfeld? Didn't have a great week last week, gets up on the grass. Ooh, just about holds on to it, does he? He does. So that's one of the rare occasions where you make a mistake and actually get away with it on the Nordschleife. So credit to Koenigsfeld, who's still going. Not particularly high up the order, down in 17th, but you'll be happy to still be going. And now we get this massive straight for the first time. Let's see how big the slipstream is. Sepp is already going for the move.
It's a nice, long, wide straight. And here comes Medema. He's already almost on the rev limiter in 6th gear, and he's going to find himself maybe in a little sandwich here. They're going to go to the inside of Italia. He might get enough of a run on Seppa. Here is Michelin Green. Some new colors on the Rust Racing machine. He's going to have to sit back and just kind of watch this. Going underneath the bridge, a little bit of a slight curve right there before heading up towards the start-finish line. And this is where it gets dicey, when this big straightaway funnels down into this uphill section, turning back and forth through pit road, all the way through T13 of what would be the Grand Prix circuit around here. And we hang on, and everyone makes it through okay. Italia, the big loser, going from 2nd to 3rd. But again, they're going to see that, place 3 more times. It's a matter of putting yourself in the right position.
Tiergarten is very, very scary because you go from that, as you say, massive straightaway in the Dottinger Hoa, and the track just gently narrows, and there's not much of a braking zone either. So it's generally a case of one of you has to give way as opposed to somebody actually going for a move. It's just a game of chicken as you get towards the final part of the lap. And as we get towards the final part of the race, final part of the lap, you can tell that something's going to give there. It's just a case of where in the field does the mistake come. You get another fantastic slipstream as you come up towards, I believe this is Flugplatz. So I'm sure we'll have some of the RaceSpotTV Nürburgring specialists both getting annoyed at our pronunciation of the corners, and also I'm sure we'll get a couple wrong. But Sepp at the moment not doing anything wrong, closer than ever on the back of the, this time, Medema car. Not quite got the opportunity, and as soon as they're out the slipstream, here actually comes Haitala trying to take the positions back, but again, just has to give way because the risk outweighed the reward.
Yeah, that's the thing that's going to be also really hard about, this track. You're going to have to find opportunities to pass, but you only get to see this, a lap 5 times. And there's only so many instances. We're only going to see that long straightaway 5 times, where Medema went from 4th all the way to the front of this train. And by the way, this is all music to Antonelli's ears. He's 5.6 seconds ahead of this group that's scrapping it up for 4th, and it's a brilliant scrap indeed. 3 different teams represented, 2 championship contenders in Seppa and Medema, and you can even include Michelin Green in that category as well. Rust Racing always putting up a fight. And it's just going to be a brilliant scrap to the end. And for Antonelli, like, he's under no threat. There's no pressure. And there's no even threat of lap traffic even coming into the picture.
Yeah, it was the start from Antonelli that changed the entire structure of the race. Was there a little look there, potentially, through a pretty bold place to have a look down at Callan-Hard. But nonetheless, had a little bit of a go. And now we curve through the circuit once again. It speeds up, comes downhill, momentum's gaining. When's the big stop going to come? Well, just a little bit too early for everybody with the slipstream as you then dip through that bank left-hander. It's all about getting the exit from there because, again, you're onto another flat-out section. And, of course, all of these slipstream variants you'd expect to be favouring Green at the back of it, but he's just not quite able to take advantage at this stage. I reckon there's a chance that he almost doesn't want to, do you reckon?
I think it's just that the track is just too narrow. We're heading down to Bergkork right now. It's going to be a tight right-hander as we're going uphill, and it's going to be a heavy braking zone. It's just not... There's not many passing corners, I don't think, to take right here, and that's why Michelin Green is just going to be content riding around here. It's also, again, I think everyone's kind of driving a little defensively, because you notice, you're seeing on the timing screen, Antonelli's continuing to grow his lead, and he's just going to put down fast lap after fast lap, but these guys have left Michael Der Truck in the dust. He's down 3 seconds as we're now side by side again. We're heading down to the Clunchland little hills. We're going to curve left, right, and right. And hopefully everyone gets it right. And that was a brave move by Haitalia. Medema had to step out of the throttle for a split second. That opens the door for Mitch Ian Green, the Black Star Racing machine. That was risky, and I'm pretty sure Medema did not appreciate that. Medema side by side with Mitch Ian Green. That's a statement I'm going to say multiple times this season, and I think Green gets a much better exit as we head now down to the carousel. The tightest and probably slowest corner on track, but the banking helps these cars fan out a little bit. And now Medema, before we even get to the long straight, ends up going from second to P5 in just a span of a few corners.
Yeah, we're not far away from it, though. And in terms of a normal race circuit, we're about a lap away from the long straight, to be honest. But in Nordschleife terms, we're getting there. And at the moment, as we saw last lap, they're all close enough to be having a go for the top of this little battle. By the time they reach the end of the lap, just hold your nerve, stay there. Make sure you don't make the little mistake. And Medema actually getting a little bit out of shape, just a tiny amount. Now we're right on board with Medema. This is going to be scary.
This is the replay. There comes Seppa through the inside, and then watch, there's that Black Star machine. Both of them, both brave drivers going up the inside, and Medema, I think, wise to back out of it, knowing that he has plenty of time, really, to get back in. And even the gap that's building right now between him and Mitchie and Green, he's going to have this huge draft down the straightaway, and they're going to get side by side again. As we look back through the field, we haven't been able to talk much about some of these battles. We got David Deadlock charging through the field once again. Frank Nguyen a little bit further back than he wants. Marcus Foltz and Jeffrey Kongsfield. This is a battle for 14th, and when everything is on the line for iRacing, for the I rating, and for the safety rating, you're going to have to fight for every position you can get just to kind of gain as much as you can, or even championship points in Frank Nguyen's case.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty scary on board, I think, in comparison to what we're used to seeing already. Gone through a massive crest and then down into a trough and immediately accelerating through, trying to get a slipstream off. Is that Nguyen ahead? Yes, it is. So at the moment, French still pushing, getting ever closer in that Ferrari-inspired machine. We got a McLaren-inspired livery at the front. Ferrari we're riding on board with. Not quite close enough as you come towards the left hand.
Oh, what has happened to Antonelli? Antonelli's slow. Out of the corner, onto the long straightaway. He has no sustainable damage I can see. What has happened to the karting champion and the Mercedes junior driver? He has dropped all the way to 5th place. There's the truck going around him. My oh my, what has happened to him? Has he gotten it all wrong on Glencorp right before the straightaway?
Oh, coming through already sideways. Big moment. Locks it up. Is he in the wall ever? Well, at the end, by his own volition, actually. So, had the chance to avoid the wall, then maybe a little bit of experience coming in for Kimi, and as a result, a tap with a wall, and your leader, now championship contender, Servai Seppa, and the stakes are ever higher between Seppa, Green, and Medema, because this could be huge for the title hunt.
Antonelli, I think, is going to be wise and take a repair job into the pit lane for new tires and for a wing. So kind of a heartbreak right there for Antonelli. He was so good up in front. He was running seconds faster than some of these cars now. Now this fight is, as you mentioned, ever important. Seppa, Green, and Medema are all championship contenders, and Haitala, kind of a one-off appearance for him. This is going to get really, really dicey, especially towards the later stages.
Yeah, this is what really matters. Medema actually just dropping off the back of this group a little bit, and I think Seppa suddenly realized that they're in the lead. Medema's dropping back. If they can just pull the pin now, then Servai could be in a brilliant position. The gap extends through the twisty stuff, but Slipstream says, oh no you don't, and pulls back the 2 and the 13 cars towards the leader.
Yep. Black Star, Rust Racing, and then the TNT Racing machine behind. Maybe looking for a move as we're heading up to the onboard corner right now. This sharp right-hander, no. Thought about it. Thought about it to go underneath the Oconto Bridge, and now this is going to be a long slipstream zone, but the track just curves so much. It really flows with the geography of the Eifel Hills, and it's just no good opportunities until you get to some of these longer straightaways to make these big draft moves. You have to be really brave.
Oh, a little bit of mistake there from Haitala, though. Hopped over the curb, meant they had to get out of it, but Green wasn't close enough to take advantage. You can make a move through that part of the circuit. The tight corners that are now forced do allow for that. But as ever on the Nordschleife, you got to be brave to put your car there, because it's all about respect between yourself and your opponent as you then accelerate through the quick double lefts in these cars. Servai Seppa hanging the rear out just a little bit as he comes through there, because he knows that he's going to need a gap by the time he gets to Dotting a Hoa, else he'll be 3rd, potentially even 4th come the end of it. You
don't forget, Medema is not that far behind. If these guys go 3 wide down, that long straightaway, it's game over for them, and then Medema gets, you know, slipstream wherever he wants. As we're heading now down the hill, close to Bergwerk right now. Slow through these final few corners before heading up in that section. Again, just making sure you don't make a mistake. We've already seen a mistake from Antonelli, and it's going to be interesting to see his charge back through the field. He's only a second behind Berchtold, and at his pace, he could get all the way up into 7th or 6th. Now we ride on board with Mitchie and Green. You have to be really careful on where you want to make your moves as well, because he's in the prime position. He's in the best spot, I think, on track to make a move. Just he can't really do anything in some of these tight sections.
No, and I think Mitchie and Green's, he's a wily fox, is Mitchell. So he'll be sitting there. He knows the Dottingaho is coming a couple more times yet, and that if he's in 3rd position come the end of the race, he might win it with the advantage of the slipstream. So I'd be surprised if we see Mitchell and Green force something, although obviously if the move is given to him, he'll take it.
That lays off a little bit right there, but here comes Haitala looking to the inside. Seppa says no. The Black Star driver trying to get up into the lead. He's going to have a nice big dose of draft here. And the other thing is, Green is not flashing his wing as much as that Black Star machine is of Haitala, and I think is where the mistakes are coming from for the number 2 machine. It's just he's flashing that wing. He wants to get out in front. He wants to be leading this race.
Which would imply that Haitala can go quicker than the car ahead of him. That is terrifying as you drop into the carousel there. The road just plummets away from you as you enter the banking. All 3 of them stick it in though. If you fall out of that one at the top, you're in trouble because you're carrying way too much speed to ever make the corner without the banking, and before you know it, you're in the wall as you are everywhere else in the circuit. Now you get this ridiculously quick section as you come back down the hill again. They're all looking reasonable. A little bit of a touch on the curve for Haitala, but gets away with it. That one appears to be rideable. And Mitchell and Green, I tell you what, he looks comfortable at the moment, doesn't he?
Yeah, looking like he's not under too much pressure. It helps that Medema's dropped off the back a little bit. The gap is 3.2 seconds now back to the TNT driver. So not under any pressure, just gets to beat the pressuree and gets to apply it to the number 2. It looks like Antonelli and Adam Wright have had a moment because both of them have dropped outside the top 10. Antonelli's almost back inside of it after that little mistake coming out of the climb course corner. We're heading to that corner again. We're going to head to this long straightaway, and Seppa, I don't know how clear you need to be to avoid the slipstream, because a second and you can still get caught.
A second's getting there though. A second is the sort of range where you start to think, you know what, I've got a chance here to be able to cover the inside and defend it. And there's still a few difficult corners before we get there. The Kleine carousel, the little carousel as they call it, is still to come, and that's one where you can easily make mistakes. So with all of that, there's a chance Seppa's making his breakaway right now. Although, to be honest, even if he does stay in front, you've got to say the gap will be minimal by the time they reach the end of the straight, and then you've got to do it all over again.
Just got to be aware of also making mistakes. Again, Antonelli had this huge, massive lead, made a mistake, and is now sitting in 10th position. He's trying to gap currently David Deadlott, and Seppa already trying to break the draft. It's Finland, Pennsylvania right now for the top 3. Here comes Pennsylvania's Mitch Ian Green to the inside. Rust Racing goes up into P2. Black Star moves down into P3 for the moment. But this straightaway is way too long for that move to be that simple, because here comes the slipstream again for Haitala. He moves back to the outside, and them fighting amongst themselves. I think that's even worse news for both of them, because Seppa's not under any pressure.
Yeah, Green made the move too early there. Normally, of course, you want to just get it done when you're in the straight, but the Dottingaho is such a huge one that it allows your rival to tuck into your slipstream and have you back, which is exactly what Haitala did to perfection. Now Green, whilst we know that he's probably got more pace in that car, he can't deploy it for yet another sector.
A little mistake there, I think, at the end of the straightaway for Seppa as they head through T13 and again across the line. He lost about a 0.2 of a second, but has gained it since back. So maybe in these slower corners is where this 2 and 13 tandem can get that number 1 machine. But I think Seppa, you know, I mentioned his urgency earlier trying to get by Haitala. I think he is faster just overall in terms of pace.
Yeah, for sure. He's looking comfortable at the moment, which is where you want to be. You want to have the pace without ever actually pushing 100%, you know. Nordschleife, it's one of those tracks, Bathurst. We were saying Alton Park earlier as well, as reminiscent of this sort of stuff, where You want to be about 85-90% of how quick you can go all the time, because the moment you're on 100, you're in a wall and it's game over, as Kimi Antonelli found out. So it's all about that sort of risk versus reward, resource management style of play. Michelin Green now goes to the outside in the blue machine. That it's looking as if it's going to be possible, but as ever, he's not got it done yet, because now the corner goes to the left before you reach the braking zone at the right, but the 13 machine braves it out. He's got the position. Now he's got to try and close down Seppa, who's 1.4 seconds clear amongst all of that.
I think it's going to be the frustrating thing for Green. He's got a gap to close in. You can see in our timing screen, it looks like Weber and Fernandez having an interesting fight back in P6. But Itala is looking like he's going to try again up the inside node. Thinks better of it, backs out. Doesn't want to make a mistake here, and you definitely don't want to make a mistake and take these two cars out. There was the battle I was just mentioning on the right side of the screen. Fernandez and Weber going back and forth, the 22 and the 15. Perez about 7 seconds behind. Andrew Alberti in Atlanta by himself. So these two can kind of fight amongst themselves, and this is really an intense battle because being the 22nd and 15th I-rated drivers in this lobby, there's big I-rating points and even big championship points in the line too for any of these guys in their division.
Yeah, of course, and that's what iRacing is all about, regardless of which series you compete in. You want to get the highest I rating you possibly can, and like you say, you'll get that by racing against the best, as these two currently are. A little look to the outside, potentially from Fernandez, but that's not going to work there, and he'll slot in behind once again. Similar situation between Hightower and Green. There was a little look potentially from Hightower, but simply not space at that part of the circuit.
And I think we kind of mentioned this before we got on here. Is it is not a wide circuit, the Nordschleife. There's walls everywhere you go. It almost kind of reminds me of the Circuit de Villeneuve in Canada. It's almost like a street circuit. There's walls everywhere you go. Very little room for air. Very little, places to make big passes. As it looks like someone has gotten a tow back to pit lane. Everyone just got promoted, and it looks like it's Antonelli again having an issue and has toned back to pit lane along with Frank Nguyen. So that's going to be an interesting story to follow up on as Green continues to defend from Hightower. And they're not gaining on Seppa, but Seppa's kind of stabilized at a 1.5 second gap. And here comes Hightower again. Black Star Racing looking to move back into position number 2. They're side by side down this straightaway going into a corner. We get a lovely view of the forest. Tight left-hander there, and Hightower not able to clear Michelin Green. Michelin Green hanging tough until they get on the straightaway. Green pulls in behind and settles for the slipstream.
Yeah, as you can tell, every time we go to a helicopter shot, there's plenty of Michelin greenery around the circuit. I've been waiting like 10 minutes to deploy that one, so it had to be done. They duck into the carousel once again. Green, interestingly, takes a much lower line than anybody else I've seen in this lobby so far. He's happy to dip the inside wheels onto the flat part, almost the apron if you like, at the banked corner, whereas everybody else goes all 4 on the banking. So something a little bit different for Mitchell, but clearly it's working for them at the moment because he's very, very quick through the bank corners.
And something that maybe like running on the ovals is going to help you out with. And again, the top 3 of the 3 that have run, only Seppa, I believe, has run on the ovals. You get a replay of what has happened to Frank Nguyen, the Montreal native, unfortunately into the wall, and the nose droops off kind of in a sad, disappointing way. And man, a tough 2 weeks for him on these broadcasted races. He's doing well on the points, but last week just a slide up in front of him, nowhere for him to go, a crash in turn 2 at Iowa, and this week all by himself. So unfortunately the 5 has gone back to pit road. I think he's going to try and truck around and gain some points. Kimi Antonelli has had another issue and is retired from the race. And these two are going to continue fighting for that second spot. And Seppa, I don't know what he's done after the carousel and into this hilly section here, but he's pulled out another 0.7 of a second. There is the Finnish driver, and it looks like it might be a Finland 1-2, unless Michelin Green can get back in front of Hightower.
Yeah, Green is certainly coming. I reckon he's the quicker of this pairing, but he's not quite had the exit onto the straights, maybe running a little bit more downforce on that car, which is why it's so easy for Hightower to get the overlap that seems so difficult for Green to get sideways. Moment for Green as they enter the small carousel, the little one having a bit of a moment there for Green, but he gathers it up. Again, he was sideways on the exit, so he's pushing. He knows how important it is that he clears Hightower on this straight, on the Dotting Hoa this time if he wants any shot at the victory.
you're going to have to try and find a way to close down Severi Seppa. But here comes a big dose of draft. Down the long straightaway we come. And right now, Green is gaining, but is it going to be enough of a speed difference? You blink out there for a split second. They pulling out. They're going to be side by side, heading into the whole range section and heading into T13 and the start finish line. Green able to clear. That was easy said than done. But on that last lap, you know that 2 car is going to come out blocking if that was the case, if this was the white flag lap.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. You'll fight it harder on the last one than you have ever before in your life. The question is, does Green now have the pace to get away? Because they'll come through this first part of the lap, and it's really, really tricky through the hats and back section. You got to try and level it all up, use the curbs to your advantage, avoid the ones that'll just spear you off into the distance or into the wall before you reach the distance, actually. But at the moment, the two of Vitala's holding firm, still very much on the back of Mitchell and Green.
So we're on the white flag lap, and it's a very, very long white flag lap, as we mentioned, over 14 miles, 20 kilometers, and it's going to be this duel until the very end. Seppa, I believe, had a little bit of a mistake, has lost some momentum, is now under 2 seconds from Mitchie and Green, but Vitala is still in range. And we'll talk about all the interesting storylines. One of the interesting storylines for Seppa, he crashed out of the lead in the iRacing Open Series here not too long ago, about a couple of weeks ago. And this would be a huge redemption win for the Finnish driver after a great performance in that race. Coming in here, and it was a bit of luck that Antonelli had an issue, but coming in here and showing that he's not going to be one to mess with as we're side by side again. Green and Vitala, they're trying to fight it amongst themselves, and the more they fight, the more Seppa scoots away in the distance.
Yeah, they had the gap down to 1.4 seconds between themselves and Seppa for a moment there, but the fighting again puts it up by that 6/10. Clever from Green though to show the 2 car the inside at the quick left before giving the outside at Arenberg, so really nice driving. And again, the gap comes down. It's a couple tenths every time they reach the corners. So I reckon Green's gone for a different setup to the rest of these guys. He's definitely running a car designed to run on its own, potentially the consequence of fighting with other people.
You saw there in our little picture-in-picture moment, there was a battle between Fernandez and Weber. That has not quieted down at all as this race has gone on. It's only getting more and more intense, and I'm sure coming down to the line, it's going to get drastically intense. So here comes Green and Vitala again. We're heading through kind of the upper section, Exmobile, Berntenfurt on the way to Bergwerk. And it's just going to be a matter of where Vitala is going to be the bravest. When can he get a move done on Green? And if he wants to get a move, a little bit of smoke ahead. I wonder if that's just a little bit of a connection issue for Seppa, or if there was a slight mistake. 2-second lead holds. And Vitala, it's all about setting up this last lap move, the last second move down the straightaway.
Yeah, and we've already seen that the opportunity to fight back is there. So it's not a case of pull out the slipstream as soon as you get the opportunity to. Vitala's going to have to be clever with this one. Sit behind, wait, hold your nerve, hold your fire, and at the last possible moment, pull out and then pull back in just before you reach the braking zone for Tiergarten. Then you get the position. You pull out as soon as you exit the corner onto the Dottinger Hook, he's just going to pass you back like you're not even there.
Here's the problem. I don't even know if you want to be Mitchie and Green in this scenario, because you're not catching Seppa. You caught him a little bit, and here comes Vitala. He's actually going to look to the outside as we're heading through the crest-hicking section. They're going to be side by side now. Green now has to slot back into 3rd place, and that was a brilliant move from Vitala. They didn't really lose much time to Seppa, only about 2 tenths, and now Mitchie and Green is going to be the chaser.
That is really, really important, because I reckon Green was hoping to have the opportunity to build a gap through where we are now until the Dottinger Hoa. We've seen that his car mega through these bank corners, but regardless of how good it is, there's a car ahead of him now and he can't deploy that speed. So this could be a masterful plan from Vitala to give himself the opportunity to fight back on the straight and not have the risk of Green using that additional downforce.
Out of the carousel, we're heading into the Hogenbogen section, into the Wiperman turn is going to be up next. And now Mitchie and Green, he needs to really plot out his move and really plot out his time because, you know, we mentioned it's a long last lap. However, last laps do end with a checkered flag, and we are coming to the end of it. Can the Rust Racing Machine get back into second, or is Hightower going to make this a finish 1-2 in the hills of Germany? A little bit wider. And you mentioned you could fight back too, so what position would you even want to be in, Tom? Would you want to be in Hightower's position or be in Mitch's position?
I reckon I'd rather be in Mitch's and make the move in a clever way. Mitch knows now, because of a couple laps ago, that if he goes for it immediately, he's not going to have it come the line. But he knows that, so he'll do something differently, and I think you'd just rather have the opportunity to do that than have all the cards be in your opponent's hand in the way that they currently are for Hightower.
Hightower has been probably the most aggressive driver of the ones that were in the top 5 to start the race. You know, Medema had some brilliant moves early on, but has fallen off the pace. A little bit of a mistake there from Green, getting a bit of the curb and getting sideways. But again, you mentioned he's great in those big corners. He almost made up 2 or 3 tenths despite that mistake. So now it's going to be all down to the run down to the start-finish line. When will Ian Green pull the move? And when will Hightower defend? Here we go. Out of Kleinkorf, we're heading down the Donterhade into this long straightaway. Ian Green already with a big dose of speed going around the outside, and he's going to have to get extremely defensive. He does. He pulls to one side of the grass, pulling to the other. Here comes Hightower back, swerving back and forth as Ian Green. He is trying his best. He looks like he's trying to do his best hockey impersonations in a race car, trying to go back and forth. But Hightower coming around the outside. Meanwhile, in the distance, Servi Seppa, after a disappointing last sector crash in the open in IndyCar, big crash, here goes Green, sideways into the wall. Hightower has spun as well, and Medema, 5 seconds back, is going to get second. Seppa, redemption as he crosses the line in P1 after crashing out of the iRacing Open IndyCar Series. He will stand on top, and Medema, who was 5 seconds behind, is on the podium, and Mitchell Detrock, who was 15 seconds behind, now he's going to stand on the podium, the number 6 car, and what a dramatic end to that battle between Green and Hightower.
You could see it coming. You could see it coming the whole way down the straight. Here's the replay. So Ian Green in the 13 machine pulls and just doesn't quite hug the apex in the way that the 2 car is expecting him to, and as a result it's 2 into 1. You'd have to say a racing incident, but neither one wanted to give way. And Medema started thinking, oh, is it my birthday? Because I've just been given an absolute gift.
And remember, Medema was fighting so early on with those two, hoping to be in a contention for a win, but I think a gift of a second place will do. He just saw the stranded Hightower and Ian Green on the side. Green, I think, had to tow back to pit, so he is going to fall down the order. Somehow, Husio Hightower still manages to finish 4th. I don't know how he managed to get that car across the line, ahead of Adrian Weber and Fidel Fernandez, who were fighting. And look at that, it was 2 seconds, so Weber was about to pass him, actually, for 4th place. But Servi Seppa, it is redemption for the Finnish driver. The number 1 car is in P1, and Medema for TNT is in P2. And Michael Deturek didn't talk about him much during the race. He had a huge gap in 6th place and ends up coming home in 3rd place. Husio Hightower got tangled, obviously, with the aforementioned Ian Green. He finishes in 4th. Adrian Weber, Raccoons Racing, in P number 5. Fidel Fernandez in P6, Gabriel Perez in P7, Andrew Berry, a quiet race for him in P8, David Dedlott, that march from the back proved worthy, he was in P number 9, and Fabio Berchtold, another TNT driver in P10. Marcus Frenz, he was in the contest for probably the best paint scheme this week in P11 with that Ferrari-inspired paint, Conor Melia in P12. Jeffrey Kongsfield, it was a much better week after that one mistake he had this week than it was last week at Iowa. He's in 13th. Ian Green, after that last crash, is in P14. Robert Barnes in P15, and then we get to the fallen drivers. Frank Doohan all by himself in P16. Adam Wright from Illinois in P17. Timu Toika from Finland crashing out in P18. Kimi Antonelli had 2 separate crashes. The Mercedes junior driver, not the best week he wanted, in P19. Matthew Mortard in P20. And then these were the fallen on the first lap. Gavin Saunders in P22. Adrian Providio did get back out running in P21. and Jurka Kastorp in P23. So that was an intense final lap. Probably did not end in the way we expected, but for Mitchie and Green and Hightower at least try to recover and get that car home in fourth. It was just a case of what might have been for these two. It was a podium almost for sure. Ended up in this brief contact right there.
Yeah, it was the fact that the 13 car was hugging the side of the road all the way up the straight, and when Mitchie and Green reached the corner, whilst using the space he was entitled to, wasn't using the tiny amount of space that he was before, and the 2 car, Hightower, turning in all the time, trying to be as aggressive as you like. 2 into 1 doesn't go particularly at the fastest point on almost any circuit in the world, so awkward for those two. Fantastic for Zeppa, who managed to break away a couple laps from the end. Even better for Ann Madema, who keeps those championship hunt looking very, very good with a P2 that, to be honest, looked very unlikely.
And again, as mentioned for Seppa, and we didn't mention this at the start of it, we were focusing so much on the other storylines, but, you know, IndyCar Open had a race here back on March 22nd. Seppa was leading majority of it, crashed out, and almost a similar way to Antonelli crashing out early on in the race and ended up finishing second to Alpine star Geodesic's Graham Saunders. But this is a redemption race, I think, for him, because he proved his way through that fight between second and fifth to get to that front, and then when Antonelli made that mistake, he was able to get that gap, and what a way to get some big championship points and bring him in the conversation. And we head to Hockenheim next week, and that's going to be a big talking point. A new track, obviously. It's been one to bring many famous races, many dramatic German races, you know, from GT3 to Formula 1. I can't even think of the ways drama can get any more interesting here. We could see Christoph Herbing go back as well. There's so many talking points just coming to this one race.
I cannot wait. There is not a single corner at Hockenheim where I haven't seen an overtake done. And these guys have tried overtakes that I've never even considered being on. So the sort of racing we should get here will be absolutely mega. Long straights for Slipstream. The arena section where it gets all technical, there's something for everybody.
Yeah, and it's going to be a matter of also setup, like where a car is going to be stronger, where a driver is going to be stronger, where a driver is going to be brave as well. There's so many different personalities and drivers that we saw in just our field today. Never mind what we're going to see next week. We could have a very large field, a very completely different field. We saw at Monza, one of the largest rooms we ever had, 73 total registered for that race. Imagine what could be happening for this big one.
Yeah, I hope we don't see any of the infamous moments between potentially the Rust Racing cars, you know, have them coming along, green is faster than you. That's hopefully something we won't see, but I think we should be in for an absolute cracker when we get here. Just the right amount of runoff to encourage racing, with just the right amount of grass to punish people when it goes wrong. I could not think of a better follow-up to the Nordschleife. You go from old Germany to new Germany as such, and it is going to be incredibly exciting.
So that's going to wrap it up here from our Week 1 stay in Germany. Remember to tune in next week for Week 2, and a reminder, follow us on all of our social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. IVRA Championship, the IVRA Endurance Championship, going to be decided tomorrow. And don't forget, Throwback Racing is also tonight, 400 laps at North Wilkesboro. There's plenty of racing action on RaceSpotTV. But again, for now, for myself, for Tom Davis, for Hugo Luis, Isabel Ballo, and TrackCams 22 for providing the cams, we say so long from the Nürburgring, and congratulations to Servi Seppa on a job well done.